NVIDIA has completely changed the AI market again, and no one seems to be talking about it. Luckily, that's why you're here in this channel because we're going to take a closer look at some of the crazy things NVIDIA has recently announced and why it's such a big deal and why this company has just increased its lead dramatically. Let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, welcome back to another episode. If you're not familiar, this is Jose Nahara, and this is the best place you're going to find any semiconductor news, especially if it's related to the AI market. This is especially the best channel for NVIDIA, so make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. So NVIDIA has been pretty much the king of the AI market, and in the past, I've talked about maybe some competition. And one of the competitions that was kind of entering into the space was going to be AMD, especially with their MI400 platform. Now, the product that I want to take a closer look at right now is, I talked a little bit about it in yesterday's episode, but it was more of just a pass through. I want to go a little more in depth today. And this is on September 9th. NVIDIA unveils the Rubin CPX, a new class of GPU designed for massive context inference. The NVIDIA Rubin CPX GPU is purpose-built to handle million tokens coding and generative video applications. Companies can monetize at an unprecedented scale with $5 billion in token revenue for every $100 million invested. I don't know if maybe all of us should group up and raise $100 million, buy one of these platforms, and in a few years end up with $5 billion. If anybody's down, let me know in the comments below. But they also mentioned that AI innovators like Cursor, Runway, and Magic are exploring how Rubin CPX can accelerate their application. Now, this is a new product, a completely whole new GPU for NVIDIA, and it is really changing the game. The main concept behind this is, we're going to look at it, but there's certain workloads that need a lot of tokens and have a lot of tokens of content. And kind of running it on just a traditional GPU is too inefficient. So they had to find a way around it. And they actually are doing it with this product, the Rubin CPX. Another important thing that we're going to see is this GPU is actually not using HBM. It's using GDDR7, which is more of a consumer-based memory. And this consumer-based memory is a lot cheaper. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to look at a lot of information, and this comes in from AI Infra Summit that is happening right now. Ian Buck, NVIDIA's VP Hyperscaler and High Performance Computing, showed a lot of great information. First, let's talk a little bit about the competition. Ian here talks about how $3 million in GB200 NVL72 investments can generate over $30 million of token revenue. This is why they mention free compute is not cheap enough. They compare it to some competition. They really didn't mention who it was, but let's say that GPU was given for free and had a quarter of the performance of what NVIDIA's solution does. Even if it was given to you for free, you're going to generate less revenue, and the cost basis of the non-GPU will still not give you the same type of money that an NVIDIA product will give you. So this is what NVIDIA says when they're not worried about the competition. Because if you're really looking at this in forms of AI factory return on investment, there's no other winner except NVIDIA. Now, this is the new GPU that we're looking at, and this is the Rubin CPX. It is purposely built CUDA GPU for context processing, and I'll talk a little bit in a bit what context processing is, but it's a GPU for massive context. And one of the main things that I mentioned is this is GDDR7 type memory, which is a lot cheaper. There was actually a study done by SemiAnalysis, and if they mentioned that the bill of material for like the B200 and a lot of these AI accelerators, roughly 50 to 60% of the bill of material is actually HBM. So HBM is crazy expensive for the AI market. And this is why companies like NVIDIA, they want to make sure that there's a healthy competition in the memory space, because they want to see that cost of HBM go down dramatically. And if there's any ability for them to maybe reduce HBM needs and maybe use consumer memory, you can also reduce the cost of your BOM dramatically, your bill of material. And that's what ends up happening with this GPU, the Rubin CPX. Now, this is a completely new chip. It is this one right here, the Rubin CPX with GDDR7. As we can see, most of the top-end compute GPUs from them use high bandwidth memory. This new chip, I think NVIDIA obviously always knew that it was coming out, but they didn't want to show it until it was really close, because I do believe now a lot of their competitors are kind of like, it's too late for me to add something like this to my product. It's not something that I can do for the Rubin competitor. Maybe I might be able to come up with something later on. But this is going to completely revolutionize the gains, and we're going to show that in a bit. So I think NVIDIA kept this secret tucked in. They kept the secret tucked in because they didn't want their competitors to know how much of a gain NVIDIA has. And this opens up the thought process of how far ahead NVIDIA is and how many other secret chips they have that they just don't want to discuss, just in case they need to pull one up from their competitors. Now, this is the understanding of inference. And the main concept right now, we've heard about it throughout a lot of different earnings. Inference is going to be the biggest market. I mean, you've heard it from AMD. Inference is going to be crazy. We just heard it from Oracle. Inference is going to be a majority of the market. But inference, the way NVIDIA breaks it down, it's two main products or two main steps. First is context and pre-field. And this is kind of like the question coming in and a lot of the information that you might not see when you're asking the questions. A lot of these models have a lot of internal, maybe prompts or information that is coming in. The second portion of that is the generation and the decode. This is kind of the output creation and how it goes through that step. These two steps, while they are considered part of inference, the type of compute or hardware solution that they need is completely different. For example, for the context prefill is mainly compute bound. So what you really care here is more about the chips. Now the generation and the decode is pretty much memory bound. And this is very crucial for HBM, right? This is why you need this crazy HBM market, because the generation and decode is very crucial for this step. But right now with this typical GPU, what's happening is your GPU is doing both of these steps, right? It's doing the context prefill and it's doing the generation decode. The unfortunate thing here is when that GPU that's super expensive because it's using a lot of HBM, when it's doing this step, that HBM is pretty much not efficient. The ROI there it's pretty much dead memory, right? You're paying super expensive for something that you don't need that crazy memory for. And obviously you kind of start to see that memory dependency here later on for the generation decode. So what NVIDIA has done, and this is even more important. So it's crucial for nowadays, but it's even more crucial when you start to see these massive token length of context or a lot of inputs coming in at once. And there's two major markets where that's crucial. First is advanced coding, where you have 100,000 plus lines of code. So massive AI agents. The second thing is video processing, where you have hours and hours of plus of video to kind of decode for either robotics training, for robotics inference, and the input coming in. Remember, every video has thousands of frames, and all those frames have so much different context. So for those two markets, which are huge, right? I mean, the video can be crazy for the robotic space. It could be crazy, and the robotics could be autonomous. It could be humanoid robotics for the consumer space. It could be robotics for the industrial market, for the manufacturing market. So that alone is just a whole different space. And then obviously AI agentic coding, that's a huge opportunity for a lot of companies as well. So even though it's two markets, those two markets have a lot of use cases, in my opinion, a lot of money as well. Now, in robotics, right? You can also say robotics in the healthcare, in the kind of understanding of safety. So many markets can be hit within these two eras. So now what NVIDIA is trying to do is kind of create a product that can handle context prefill, which is more compute bound and not necessarily memory bound. And this is where this chip comes in. It is one that has a lot of compute chip available to it, but it doesn't have that expensive memory. to go with it. And this completely changes the game because they kind of created a new system. This is the old system, the Vera Rubin NVL 144. The NVL 144, NVIDIA mentions that it was going to be 3.3 times better than the GB300. It was going to provide about 3.6 exaflop of ND floating point 4 compute. It was going to create about 2.5 times more HBM4, about 2 times more fast memory, and it was available in the second half. Now, what was looking interesting was if we can go back into the competition, AMD announced their Helios AI rack, and they mentioned that this rack that they were going to announce in this rack scale performance was actually going to be nearly a 1x, and in certain concepts, even better than the Vera Rubin. 72 GPUs. We can see around similar kind of exaflops in AI compute for FP4 and FP8. So AMD was coming out and saying, look, we're going to compete here with NVIDIA. This is going to be the product that's going to get us there. And based on the numbers, it really looked like AMD was going to be able to compete. Obviously, I've talked a little bit about the risk out there. And what I'm going to show you next doesn't mean that's necessarily bearish for AMD completely. But AMD is gonna need to continue to innovate because what I'm gonna show you is pretty crazy. I'm gonna say on the top level, everybody wants a second competitor. But if that second competitor is not providing the same type of performance as the major player, it's gonna be a harder time for that competitor. Now, NVIDIA announces the Vera Rubin NVL 144 CPX. So now this has pretty much exactly what the other version had, except it has the Rubin CPX beforehand. Now, if we look at the comparison, before they were saying there was going to be 3.3 times better than the GB300. Now they're saying it's going to be 7.5 times better. This is a 100% gain just because of this solution. And now, if we were to look at just AMD's prior numbers, this is going to be looking half. The GPU domain is going to stay the same, but things like the flops is going to be half the performance of the Vera Rubin when you're comparing it to the NVL 144 CPX. This is a massive growth. I mean, buying something that's going to give me 50% less performance is definitely something that's going to tell maybe some of the competitors, maybe I should not buy as many AMD GPUs. Maybe I have to go with this NVL 144 CPX again. So NVIDIA is just making it tougher. Again, I don't think this is game over for AMD. I think AMD has the opportunity and they're moving in the right direction. But now it's no longer a market where AMD can say that they are a true competitor. Again, NVIDIA was like, I let you think that you were going to be a competitor, but out of nowhere, you're back to being 50% my performance. And I think this is pretty crazy for NVIDIA. And again, it does showcase that how many secret chips does NVIDIA have that can allow them to jump these massive performance. And as we're going into AI agentic, we're going into this AI coding, you can definitely have this market of Rubin CPX and so on and so forth. Now, NVIDIA is also giving you investors or purchasers the opportunity. If you don't want to buy the CPX, you can actually buy it individually. You can buy a rack with VR CPX independently. So hyperscalers can say, look, I'll buy some VRL and VL 144s. Maybe every so often I might want to include a VR CPX. So I'll buy that later on. Regardless, the improvements here is pretty, in my mind, mind-blowing. And not many people are talking about this. Again, I don't want to be an AMD bear. I own AMD bear, but realistically, this really does change the game for NVIDIA. Again, if they're able to provide 100% growth in performance versus what your competitive product was going to be, I think that is wild. Now, NVIDIA also has kind of talked a little bit more about the AI market, right? It's no longer just about the AI server. It's about the data center. So NVIDIA has also worked in showcasing kind of a reference design on how you're going to build gigafactories to scale. This is crucial because if you want to go out there and find ways to build these massive data centers, if you are an AI company, you don't want it to take forever. If there is a reference scales, you're going to pay for that speed. Because being in this AI race, you want to be first. And they did partner up with a lot of great companies. We can see Cadence here, GE Verona, Schneider Electric, Vertiv, a lot of companies that are familiar here in the energy space, or that you might be familiar in the energy space. But this showcases that NVIDIA first, back then it was, can you build a chip? NVIDIA was great at it. But then NVIDIA changed the game by, is it, can you build a rack scale system? And they were the first to do something like this, like the NVL72. That's where the market is coming into right now. This is where AMD and other competitors are trying to catch up to NVIDIA. They're trying to make that rack scale performance. NVIDIA is now saying, it's no longer about the rack scale. It's about the data center. We're helping you how to build the data center, and we have great partners to be able to do that. So NVIDIA continues to demonstrate why they are a massive leader. The other thing that I want to say is NVIDIA is also finding ways to make connections. And this is something I talked about in the past. I also thought this was a revolutionary product for the AI space. NVIDIA introduced Spectrum XGX Ethernet to connect distributed data centers into gigascale AI superfactories. The ability to connect data centers meet hundreds of kilometers away and making it seem like one giant data center is crucial for training, and is also crucial for massive scale inference. So in just the last 2 months, NVIDIA, in my opinion, has completely revolutionized the game. First, obviously, this connectivity solution for distribution data center. Then, like I mentioned, the ability to help with these reference designs for data centers. And the more one that I'm super excited, the introduction of a new product that completely changed the game and is most likely going to change the roadmap for a lot of other players here with this product, the CPX GPU. Now, am I saying NVIDIA is going to be a multi-bagger from here? I don't know. I don't know. But I do believe NVIDIA is going to continue to dominate and be a market beater. And for that reason, I'm not going to sell any of my shares. I'm still a major holder of NVIDIA, still massive position I haven't sold. The excitement here is, if the AI story is real, like I believe is, NVIDIA is not slowing down. They are not letting competitors even catch up to them. And if they let you think that you caught up with them, they're gonna release something new and just blow past the doors. For me, NVIDIA will continue to be a dollar cost averaging opportunity. And for patient investors, you are going to get those random dips that will make the stock look extremely attractive. For me right now, that's where NVIDIA is. It's a dollar cost average opportunity. I wouldn't load the truck just yet. It could also be my bias because I have a massive position in NVIDIA, but this is a stock for the patient investor. Throughout the multiple years that I cover NVIDIA, I've always said the patient investors, and I always tend to pound when I believe is great opportunities. I talked about NVIDIA here in the 90s, here in the 94s, when we saw the DeepSeek moments. Those are moments that I believe are the patient time for investors, that you dollar cost average, now is the time to be aggressive. For me, I haven't seen that moment just yet, but in the semiconductor space, there's always the opportunity. So let me know what you guys think. If you are an AMD investor, does this worry you a little bit? Because it does change the landscape, right? It really does. If now you're no longer a competitive product with the MI400, how can you kind of sell your product? Again, it's crucial for these hyperscalers to have some form of competitors. So I do believe AMD's MI400 will still be a great product for them, but now there's a little bit more of a hurdle they have to go through. So in another episode, maybe I might talk about the benchmarks. I was going to talk about it in this episode, but maybe I got a little too technical and the episode went a little bit longer. But in the upcoming days, I will be doing the benchmark on Inference. And too long, don't watch that episode. NVIDIA continues to kill it. This was the inference benchmark, and they continue to dominate thanks to the new solutions like they're doing here, which is that kind of distribution of workloads where they create two workloads within the inference. You have the context side and you have the generation decode. And NVIDIA not only has the GPUs behind it, but if we look at kind of their product here kind of talks about this disaggregated serving. So within a massive NVIDIA GB200, some of the GPUs already are dedicated for generation, some other are generated for context. And this has allowed NVIDIA to kind of increase the performance of their Blackwell GPUs by nearly 50%. Now add the GPX, the CPX GPU, that's going to grow dramatically more, and the cost of ROI is going to decrease dramatically. And NVIDIA is also doing it with some other software solutions. They're doing it with NVIDIA Dynamo Inference Framework, which helps with this disaggregated serving. So it's not only NVIDIA providing the hardware solution, they're also providing software solutions so you are able to do this. NVIDIA has completely changed the game, bullish for it long term. Again, for me, it's more of a dollar cost average opportunity, but I think this is extremely bullish if the AI market is as real as we think it is. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.